everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm sharing with you day 3 of the hashtag AJ Snark Attack 2020 event brought to you by Art Joy of Sharing Art Community on Facebook. The link to the community is below the video in the See More section. And if you click on that link and ask to join, please remember to answer the questions. So we have snarky quotes for every day in the month of October 2020. And I'm working in my Diallusions Dialogue Insert journal. This journal is tall and thin, and it's made out of like the same type of cardstock that manila tags are made out of, shipping tags. And I just have this pile of little tiny pieces of painty papers, scraps, whatever, that I dumped out of a little bucket that is on my desk, a little tiny container that's on my desk. They're small pieces. And I am just, without thought or planning, collaging them down to completely cover the background of my page. I want to do something that I call an exclusion technique, which is to paint out the background of something and allow the colors that you leave to shine. Some other people call that reverse painting. I don't know what is the right thing to call it, but I'm talking about excluding the background, so I call it exclusion. So I'm not overly invested in where any of these pieces are going. A lot of them are going to kind of get covered up. I don't ever really paint out the background. Like, I don't make multiple layers or whatever to make it completely obliterated. I like to see the pattern and color coming through. So I usually water down my gesso or whatever I'm using to do the background so that there's still color and pattern, but it's not as obvious. And then that makes the thing that I want to be shown stand out from the background. So I'm just putting things down. I like to do this. I like to get my hands all gluey and stick things down, make a very colorful and full of pattern background from all these scraps, but not caring exactly where they're going, but only that it's all getting covered, if that makes sense. This is something that's relaxing to me, and it's a good way to start an art journal page if you like mixed media, if you're not concerned about layers and covering up your layers and, oh no, I had that thing and then it got covered up. If you're not one of the people that stress about that, this is a great way to go. These are just scraps from all kinds of things and places, and they're tiny, they're little ones that I just need to use up. Oftentimes, I will sort these types of scraps, and I have these plastic boxes that I call color boxes, and I sort these little scraps into the appropriate color. You know, there's a yellow, there's an orange, there's a red, there's, so on and so forth. That's what I generally do with them, but I just haven't had interest or time to do that recently, and so they just keep piling up in these little containers everywhere on my desk. And when I'm done, I just put everything in a little thing, and I'll get to it later. I will sort it later. And a better use is to do this. Use it all up. This is a good way to start a master board. If you want to make something like ATCs or card fronts or something like that, you can do this all over a large piece of cardstock or something, or watercolor paper, and then cut it up into smaller pieces and make things with it. That's always a fun thing to do as well. So it's a good way to just use up all those crazy pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw over the top of it. It's tricky to draw over this because all the different papers have different weights. Some of them were more like card, and others were deli paper, and some of them were just, regular papers, thin papers, thick papers. There was even some tissue papers. So everything on this is very bumpy. So getting the pencil to draw over it was probably the biggest struggle that I had on this one. the other thing I'm noticing is that everything that I glue on the edge in the center of the book doesn't want to stay stuck down. It's another thing I've noticed with this. It is the hazard of using a already bound, tightly sewn journal like this is that you end up getting cracks in the center of the book, which just kind of annoys me. On the first page, I trimmed it off, but then it just looks trashy, and so I'm not going to trim this one. I'm just going to leave it, but it's going to build up so much weight in the middle of the book that eventually the book won't close at all. But that's okay. It's a journal, and it goes inside this this other case that has elastics, and you slide it under and pop it in there. You can do that, or you can use it as a separate journal and just put like a belly band or something around it with elastic to keep it shut. But that is something I'm noticing nosing on the right hand side where the spine is bound. I can't get that paper to stick down. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, so I'm drawing all through that talking, and I just, lost my train of thought. I'm drawing. I drew with the pencil, HB pencil first, graphite, and then I went over everything with this Stabilo All pencil in black, which is a really, really water reactive pencil. So then I got out some white gesso. This is golden white gesso, and put it on my paper plate palette. Then I mixed it up with some water so that it wasn't as opaque. And I'm just going around the outside of my little giraffe here that I drew. And I'm going to exclude that background and only leave the parts that are inside the giraffe as the colorful bits for this one. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? But my gesso is watered down. I don't want to completely obliterate it. I'm just making it go back, push it back, and still have this interesting pattern and even actual physical texture as well as visual texture in the background without it being completely distracting from the main image, which is this funny little giraffe I drew. Excuse me. Then I went and used my water brush and kind of activated the Stabilo around that I had drawn with. Even though it's black, it's still a little bit hard to see over all that color and pattern. So I did want to just kind of darken it up a little bit and also give it a little bit of a chance to not be quite as reactive. It's not like an Inktense pencil where when you activate it with water, it just stops moving. It isn't that type of pencil. And actually, I could have used an Inktense and it probably would have been better, but I always forget about that until after I do it because the Stabilo is sitting on my desk and the Inktense pencils are put away. I'm sure you all know how that is. Then I used the water brush with a little bit of gesso and kind of highlighted a few areas, the spots, because I wanted to take some translucent papers or more translucent papers, tissue papers, deli paper, stuff like that, little bits of napkin, and kind of bring out the spots a little bit on the giraffe. Giraffes have spots, and that's important. That's an important part of them. So I'm not cutting exactly the shape of the spot. Remember, these are see-through papers, and so I'm just kind of putting them on. I put the gesso over so that those translucent papers would shine a little bit more by having kind of a little bit of white in the background of them. And I'm going over all the spots with these translucent papers to make that area of the giraffe's neck more interesting. I'm using a Yoo-Hoo glue stick at this point. At the beginning, I used Liquitex matte gel medium and a brush to attach all my background papers. And then I switched to this glue stick for all these tiny papers. It's silly to, go through the whole brush and goopy stuff and whatever when I can just glue these tiny, tiny ones down with this this particular glue stick, which is really good for this type of process. It's Yoo-Hoo glue stick in blue, and it turns white when it's dry. So once I had all those little bits down, then I am using this Pentel pocket brush pen. It is like a paintbrush, like a synthetic paintbrush, but it has black India ink in it in the cartridge. And the cartridges are replaceable, so you can replace it once it's finished, once it's empty. You can pop a new one in there. It's a pretty cool product from Pentel. They're the same ones that make the water brush that I'm using too. Because this India ink, if it's not all the way dry, it can be blended like I'm doing a little bit to make it, not such a hard line. And you can get a fat line or a thin line with this because it's just a little paintbrush. So it works exactly as if it's a paintbrush. And I filled in the eyes, I filled in the nostrils, all that type of stuff. And then I'm going around the spots again to make them stand out. When you do mixed media, you do a lot of things that seem repetitive, right? I've drawn this in pencil, I've drawn it in Stabilo All, and now I'm going over it with the Pentel pocket brush. But each time it changes the way it looks. It changes the properties of the lines because these lines are a little bit blurred to make a shadow around the giraffe. And they're darker. This is very dark. And the Stabilo All pencil was a little bit more light. I'm also adding a little bit more collage in a few areas of the face to kind of make the cheekbones stand out a little bit. Teeny tiny bits of paper. And they keep sticking to my fingers. That's the one thing about doing something this small. It's like, stop sticking to my fingers. So then I was trying to, I just didn't like the background very much. And I was trying to think of ways that I could solve my dissatisfaction with the background. But before I did that, I came in with a few little quick highlights with my white fine tip Posca pen. Love this pen. Use it on almost every project that I do. I really love this pen. So if you haven't tried a fine tip Posca pen, I do have a link in the description box below to those pens. I buy them in a pack of 3. Takes them a while to get here because they come from a foreign country, but they are the best deal. And then I decided I would just do a little bit of finger painting on the background just to bring some of the color back. It was blah. It was just blah. Didn't like it. So I used some yellow acrylic paint, some orange acrylic paint, and some bright pink fluorescent acrylic paint with my fingers to just add a little bit of color, a little bit of translucent, well-blended color into the background. And then with the white gesso still on my palette, I brought in a stencil for mark making, a couple different stencils for mark making. And instead of getting out a any type of an applicator, I just use my fingers for that too. That gives you a more organic, less fussy stenciling if you're just trying to do mark making. There's no reason to make it super clear and even and special. Just, use your finger, do some finger painting. Then I dried all that up really well so I could move on to my next step, which is to add my quote. And the one I picked is, "I'm sorry, did I just roll my eyes out loud?" How many of us have thought that in our head? That's funny. I'm using a small rubber stamp set, which is from Stampin' Up, but is discontinued at this point. Pretty much all my Stampin' Up stamps are discontinued, but I do still like to use these letters sometimes, so I will try to find them on eBay and link them down below because usually you can find them on eBay, the discontinued stamp sets. I don't know why, but you can. So I'm just stamping it with archival black ink, and then I will be done with this page. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're enjoying this series. If you are, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment or a question below, and I'll answer you within 24 hours. You can subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please do. I do make a lot of videos, and so there's a lot of content for you to watch, as well as I don't know, I think it's getting close to 900 videos already on my channel that you could watch. There's plenty of content here for you if you enjoy my style. Also, you can pin this on Pinterest. I forgot to make a little board for all these, but I will. I'll do that. Try to remember to do that right now after I'm finished with this video. I'll make a board for all my videos having to do with hashtag AG Snark Attack 2020. Thanks. Bye bye.